All right, council member, I think we are live streaming. Let me just get verification.
You say we're ready? We're not quite ready yet, Sheila?
No. We are ready now. All right, council member, I think we are live streaming. Let me just get verification.
Okay. You say we're ready? We're not quite ready yet, Sheila?
No. We are ready now. All right, council member, I think we are live streaming. Let me just get verification. Yes, we are ready to go, so we are live streaming.
You said we're not ready yet, Sheila?
No, we are ready. We are ready.
Okay, yes. So I should go ahead?
Take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I want to start by saying Happy New Year to everyone. And I hope everyone had a safe and wonderful holiday season. I'm pleased to report that I am recovering. For those of you who know, I've been challenged myself. I've been doing lots of work here at home, and I appreciate everybody's well wishes. It's been wonderful to hear from so many people. I've been doing lots of work here at home, and as I mentioned, and been doing physical therapy and taking all the work doing all the work that's needed to get me to the next place. So thank you, everybody, for all your well wishes. And I just want to reach out to you and say thanks. Now that we've set new ward boundaries, which we have done, it is time to work on adjusting the Advisory Neighborhood Commission and single member district boundaries as a part of the district's ongoing redistricting process. In this final part of the redistricting process, and I thank everybody for all the work they did to help us get to where we are today. Each ward council member, which I would be one of those, of course, was responsible for establishing a ward task force to advise on ANC, ANC and SMD boundary recommendations. As we asked people via our social media platforms, our newsletter and listservs who were registered, were Ward 7 registered residents. We're interested in asked who was interested in serving on the task force to complete a brief questionnaire to be considered. And we had, believe it or not, we had 52 respondents to the survey. And that is really outstanding to get that many people who actually responded. So thank you so much. From those whose respondents, those who were respondents and appointees from council members, Bonds and Henderson, we finalized our 19-member Ward 7 redistricting task force, and I'm glad to join all of you tonight for our very first meeting. So thank you so much. I welcome you to this meeting. This meeting is open to the public as such, as I mentioned earlier. I want to take a moment to thank those who responded to our survey and introduce those who have been appointed to this 19-member task force. They include Eric Rogers, for example, Max Richmond, Justin Linney, Travis Swanson, Patricia Stamper, Melissa Freeze, Mandela Deskin, and if I'm mispronouncing some names, please forgive me. I apologize so much for that. We have Tamika Bowden, Keith Raphael, Hassan Towery. Thank you, Keith, so much for your work on this, and you've been a trooper along the way. Brian Alcorn, Caprice Kassan, Manisha, and if I've mispronounced some of these names, please forgive me. I am so sorry for that. Manisha Petruni, Tamara Blair, Francis Campbell, Lee Wilson, Joel Caston, Wendell Felder, Dr. Marla Dean, and also Ashley Ruff. I want to thank you all for choosing to serve in this important capacity. I also want to thank Tamara Blair and Joel Caston for agreeing to co-chair this task force. So thank both of you so much for your work. Per my doctor's orders, I can't stay for the entire meeting this evening as much as I would like to. However, my chief of staff, Sheila, and our legislative director, Terrence Norflitz, will continue explaining this part of the process, roles and responsibilities and task force, and answer any questions that you may have. Again, I want to thank you for serving. And now let me turn it over to Sheila. Let me turn it over to you to take on the responsibility from this point and to try to answer any questions that may arise as we go forward with this. Again, I want you to know how delighted I am to see how many people have stepped up and said they wanted to serve. Not everybody could be selected because we just couldn't do that. But we have done the best job we can to make sure that there's a place for everybody who wanted to serve. And I know that there are some people who wanted to serve and may not have been selected, and I really apologize for that. I wish we could do it, but there will be other opportunities. I think all you all know that I try to be as inclusive as I possibly can be. And I know my staff feels strongly about that as well. And we will do as much as we possibly can to move forward in that regard. So, Sheila, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point to take on the responsibility for answering people's questions and answering additional issues, comments they may want remarked upon. And we'll certainly do that. So, all right, Sheila, you're on.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. And it is awesome to see you this evening. Good evening, Ward 7. As Councilmember Gray mentioned, I am Sheila Bunn. I humbly serve as Councilmember Gray's Chief of Staff to the great Ward 7. I am a resident of Ward 8, so I love all things on the East End. So wanted to start tonight's meeting just by going over how we got here and the road ahead. So after my remarks, then I will turn it over to our co-chairs so that they can run the rest of the meeting. As many of you know, Councilmember Gray has convened this 19-member task force whose important responsibility is to redraw the Ward 7 ANC and single-member district boundaries. There were several guiding principles that we used in establishing this Ward 7 task force. We wanted to make sure that it was a broadly based ward task force, that there was fair representation racially and ethnically, gender-wise, as well as geographically within the ward. Each member of the task force had to be a resident of the ward, as well as each at-large council member had the opportunity to appoint a member to the Ward 7 task force. And as Councilmember Gray mentioned, Council members Henderson and Bonds did in fact make appointments to this task force. Each member of the task force shall serve until the task force files its final report, which is due to the council by the close of business on April 1st, 2022. And each member of the task force will serve without compensation. And we want to be as transparent as we can be about the process for selecting the task force. So just want to give you a brief overview of what that process was and how individuals were selected. And I know that some of the members have commitments at 6:30 and we should be done, if not by then, but before then with this introductory meeting. As Councilmember Gray mentioned, several people reached out to us to participate on the task force, as well as we sent out a questionnaire to the ward asking for folks who were interested to serve. Even those who asked to be on the task force, we asked them to fill out our questionnaire because we wanted to make sure that we had the same information from all of our respondents. We, asked whether or not folks were current ANC commissioners, whether or not they were current civic or citizen association officers, as well as basic demographic information so that we could make sure that we were hitting all of the points that we were supposed to by law. And specifically, we also asked respondents what expertise or perspective did they bring to the task force should they be selected. From that questionnaire, we received 52 requests to participate on the task force. Very pleased with that number. But of course, as Councilmember Gray said, we could not, unfortunately, select everyone who wanted to serve on the task force. And we also wanted to make sure that we had an odd number of memberships so that there would not be a deadlock of any kind within the task force. And the co-chairs in the task force will introduce themselves momentarily, but also want to share with you in looking at the makeup of the task force, in addition to what is required by law for the membership of the task force, we also wanted to make sure that every ANC commission was represented, whether by a non-elected official or a current ANC commissioner. We wanted to make sure that every ANC commission was represented. And very happy to report that all 5 of the current ANC commissions have at least one representative, and the 2 ANC commissions that have been redistricted into Ward 7, have a representative. We also wanted to make sure that there was current membership from current ANC commissioners on the task force to have that expertise around boundaries and the makeup of ANCs and single member districts. So we have 4 current ANC commissioners that are participating on the task force, as well as a number of the task force members are former ANC commissioners. We also wanted to make sure, to the extent possible, that we had participation from our civic and citizen associations in the ward. So we have a good number of civic and citizen association membership on the task force as well. And finally, again, we wanted to make sure that we had fair representation in terms of race and ethnicity, gender, and geographics within the ward. In terms of race and ethnicity, we have 14 individuals who identify as Black or African American, 4 who identify as white or Caucasian, and 1 who identifies as South Asian. Gender, we have 11 men and 8 women. And in terms of the Northeast versus Southeast configuration of the ward. We have 10 from the Northeast side and 9 from the Southeast side. So again, it was a hard process with 52 respondents, but we tried to be as fair and as transparent as possible, making sure that as many people in the ward were represented by membership on the task force. And I think that is it for me. Chairs Blair and Castone, if you have no questions for me, or if the task force has no questions for me, I turn it over to you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to start by thanking Councilmember Gray and Chief of Staff Bunn and Legislative Director Terrence Norflitz for their work in helping get us off to a good start. And I know they're going to be with us all the way to keep us on track so that we can meet our deadline of April 1st. And we do have an agenda tonight, so it's at some point, Sheila can bring that up at her convenience to let everybody know where we're going tonight. This is pretty much, I think, an introductory meeting, so I will introduce myself. Tamara Blair, I'm in my second term as a commissioner for ANC 7D01, which is the eastern portion of Kingman Park. My partner, co-chair, if he would like to introduce himself, then we will cover some, what I call housekeeping, and probably some questions that everyone has on their mind about how we're going to meet, when we're going to meet, and so on. So Joel, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Blair. My name is Joel Castone. I'm the commissioner here and 7F07. I have the privilege to represent the men and women housed inside of DC jail, as well as those who are the residents at Park Kennedy luxury apartments, as well as the women who are in families at the Harriet Tubman Women's Shelter. So we are here with this great task. I also want to feel good to see Councilmember Gray healthy and with us today, and for the work that you are doing, Miss Bunn. Got it correctly this time, her name. Yeah, and the support that we have to do this here, and welcoming all the task members, each one of us who, and as I just want to echo the sentiment, the fact there were so many submissions, so many individuals that wanted to serve. And so that was very encouraging how they made the selection, being inclusive across the board, ethnicity, gender, etc., means that we're going in the right direction. That's all I can share right now. I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Blair.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I know a lot of people are probably wanting to know how often are we going to meet. The task force, I think most members are here tonight. And so unless there's a compelling reason why we should not meet on Thursdays, we will probably go forward with Thursdays. And what we're looking at is 5 additional.
Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you quickly?
Sure.
We have, in addition to your task force members, we have a good close to 60 attendees from the public on. So it might be helpful if the task force members very quickly introduce themselves in case members from the public don't know who they are. Okay,
we can do that, and we'll jump back to the number of meetings and how often we're going to meet and what type of meetings there'll be. So I'm not sure, I'm working off of my phone, so I can't really see who's participating.
You have your whole task force here, so whomever wants to go first, you have the ability to unmute and just, very quickly so that the folks in the audience know who you are and who you represent.
Okay, I'll start. Rogers, I'm a resident of Hillcrest, and I'm excited to on the task force.
I'll go second. Chief Asantari, Marshall Civic Association. Pleasure to be here. Can't wait to get to work.
Mr. Campbell, did you want to go?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Francis Campbell. I'm a resident of what was referred to as Hill East, at the area that has now been annexed into Ward 7. I'm a former commissioner of 6 terms and a resident of Burke Street for 40 years.
Don't be shy. Who's next?
Well, my name is Patricia Stanford. Sorry, Dr. Dean. Do you want to go? Go ahead. My name is Patricia Stanford. I'm a resident of Deanwood. I hashtag our Deanwood. I'm a member of the Deanwood Citizen Association, the Ward 7 Ed Council, Dr. Marla Dean, and I like to help the women's at the Harriet Tubman Women's Shelter every chance I get with neighbors of mine here in Deanwood. Thank you.
Hello, I am Marla Dean. I am the chair of the Ward 7 Ed Council. I live in Penn Branch, and I'm also the secretary of the Devon Park Civic Association.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Lee. I'm former ANC 7007. That's the Paradise and Parkside communities up in Kenilworth Parkside. I'm currently involved as chair of the board for Friends of Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens and serve on the Ward 7 Resilience Subcommittee.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Melissa Freese. I'm the former president of the River Terrace Community Organization. I'm also part of the Fletcher Johnson Task Force, the Friends of Kingman and Heritage Islands, and have been a Ward 7 resident for the last 17 years, and I'm very thrilled to be on this task force. Thanks a lot.
Jump in here. My name is Max Richmond, Deanwood resident of the last 6 years, treasurer of the Deanwood Citizens Association, and Bicycle Advisory Council member for Ward 7.
I'll go next. I'm Mandela Deskins, Capitol View resident, secretary of Capitol View Civic Association, and the treasurer of the Ed Council, along with Patricia and Marla.
Good evening. My name is Caprice Casey. I'm a Ward 7 resident for the past 13 years. I run a community center here right off of Benning Road and very engaged in 7E04, I want to say, right in the immediate area in Marshall Heights.
Hello, my name is Travis Swanson, and I am an ANC Commissioner 7B03, which actually touches 4 different neighborhoods, DuPont Park, Fairlawn, Randall Highlands, and Twining. I have parts of. I reside in Randall Highlands and also serve on the Randall Highlands Citizen Civic Association as the Director of Community Outreach. And lastly, I also serve on the Transit Rider Advisory Council, or TRAC, representing Ward 7. It's great to be here and nice to see all the familiar faces.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ashley Bruff. I stay in Ward 7 F01 off of the Minnesota Avenue corridor. I'm currently the acting president for Fort DuPont Civic Association and soon to be sworn in by the end of this month as the presiding president for Fort DuPont Civic Association. And I'm excited. This is my first time on the task board. So, hey, hi, everybody again.
Hi everyone, I'm Nisha Petruni. I live in Kingman Park, which is part of Commissioner Blair's single member district in 7D01. I'm also the current vice president of the Friends of Kingman Park Civic Association, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wendell Felder. I'm a proud Ward 7 resident, current vice chair for ANC 7D, as well as the chair of the best Democratic group in the city, which is the Ward 7 Democrats organization. I'm extremely excited to work with such a diverse group of individuals, and thank you to the council member in his office for the opportunity.
Go ahead, Ms. Bowden.
I'm Tamika Bowden. I live in Fort DuPont. I'm like Ashley, my first task force. I am super excited to be here and to connect with all of you to do this work.
I don't think Commissioner Alcorn has gone.
All right, I'll take the opportunity. Thank you. Hello, Brian Alcorn, Commissioner for ANC 6A08 and proud new Ward 7 resident. Been a Capitol Hill resident for 25 years and look forward to serving on the task force.
And Lee Wilson. You're muted, Lee. Unmute yourself, Lee.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sheila. I am Lee Wilson. I'm a resident of Benning Ridge, the Benning Ridge community, 38-year resident of Ward 7.
Commissioner Blair, Commissioner Castone, I think all of your task force members have introduced themselves.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So April 1st, we have to keep that in mind. And the question is how we're going to get there to that deadline of April 1st. What we've come up with as co-chairs is 5 additional meetings in addition to tonight, not counting tonight, because tonight we're just kind of getting introductions, figuring out which way we're going to go. So 5 additional meetings. 3 of those will be public listening sessions. So we won't be able to have, 40 people or 50 people a night to give everybody 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes, but we do want people to participate. We want to hear from them. Tonight, we're running up against deadlines or timelines with people that have meetings after this, and we want to be respectful for everyone's time. So we're going to have 3 public listening sessions, and then we'll have, after those listening sessions, we will have 1 meeting where we will have a few proposed draft maps. And if you participated in the Ward 7 or the district ward realignment earlier, you know how that gave everybody an opportunity to come together and see a couple of the draft maps that were proposed. And then the task force will meet after that, and we will select from the drafts or some combination of the drafts. Let's say that. I'm a co-chair, but we cannot get through this with just 2 co-chairs. So I'm going to be calling on or asking for support from within the task force for a couple of things that we're going to need to keep us on point. And I'll get to that in a minute or 2. But I think it's important that we all agree on some basic standards of operating, how we're going to conduct ourselves during these meetings. So I'm just going to run through some things. If the task force thinks that it's unreasonable to ask for these things, then we can discuss that. But I just want this to be a collaborative, transparent process. And our goal here is to realign our ANCs and SMDs for the good of Ward 7. So it may not be the idea or anyone in particular's idea of what's good for their individual community. We have to look at all of the communities together, how it's going to make Ward 7 a better ward going forward. This is a space where we're looking for input, and it's pretty much required and expected because, again, we can't and don't want to do this on our own, just the co-chairs. So I want people to feel free to ask questions, particularly our task force members, the public who's invited to attend all of our meetings. If you want to put your question in the chat, like tonight we have 80 people. We can't possibly answer 80 questions tonight. So if you can put your questions in the chat, the meetings are recorded. And if we can't get all the answers live as the meeting is happening, we'll be able to possibly answer those before the next meeting. We won't be able to debate every point when we're offering what we think the realignment should look like, but every point needs to have sufficient justification to be considered for the final map that we come up with. And please, I want everybody to understand that there are no dumb questions. And I have to say that because not everyone is intimately familiar with every inch or every mile of Ward 7. So we're going to help each other become familiar. And so it's really going to be a learning process for many of us as we go through this. We want you to contribute to the process. We want you to listen. Listen, and there's a difference between listening and hearing. I don't know, maybe you've heard somebody say that, hey, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, which can be an indicator that listening is a critical skill if we're going to work together on something. And we're not going to interrupt people when they have something to say. We want to hear people out, but again, we must be respectful of the time. So we want to be concise when we have something to say, and we want to share the time with as many participants of the meetings going forward. If you've spoken on a topic or a particular area, please allow 1 or 2 other people to speak. If you have more to say, that's fine, but we want to share the time. At this point, I'm gonna stop talking and see if my partner, my co-chair, has something that he would like to contribute in terms of how we foresee the meetings going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Blair. You covered the many points that we spoke before we had the meeting today. I think it'd be a good time to transition to Q&A from the rest of the task force members. Yeah, I think this would be a great time for that.
So commissioners or co-chairs, you have a question from Task Force Member Travis Swanson. And then I also see Wendell Felder.
Great.
Sorry, Commissioner Caston, were you going to say something?
No, I would just acknowledge the fact you had a question.
Okay, so my question was around the date and time, or the days and times of meetings. I know before this you'd said we could, Commissioner Blair had said, Thursday might make sense to move forward, but it seems like Thursday might be a really busy day for a lot of people. It sounded like a lot of us have meetings butting up against this. And Thursdays in general seem to be a busy day. I actually have meetings Thursday nights, 3 out of 4 Thursdays of the month. And once our civic association starts meeting up again, I'll have the 4th one booked too. And it just seems like it's a very popular day for meetings. And I'm wondering if we could potentially pick another date or even send around a doodle to see what works best for people, if that's an option, or just if other people agree. I mean, I can make this work now, but like I said, I have a commitment at 6:30 that I have to have a hard stop for.
I think we're open to doing a doodle poll to see what day is best for the majority of the task force members. I mean, myself, I've had meetings every evening this week. So tomorrow will be my only day without a meeting. So yes, we will definitely look at sending out a doodle poll to see if that is Thursday's a good day for the majority or not.
Great, appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Felder.
Thank you. My question is, prior to the redistricting process, Ward 7, we had a total of 38 commissioners. However, with the new addition of the commissioners from Rosedale as well as the other side of Kingman Park. Have the two co-chairs given any consideration about possibly adding a new commission to Ward 7?
Excellent question. That is something, as I'll be fully honest, as co-chairs, we have not had that discussion. Again, this is a collaborative effort. I have my own opinion. I'm not sure how my co-chair feels about that, but I think it's going to be a necessary thing. I don't see how we can avoid it, actually. Good question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. No, we haven't discussed as she stated, but it seems to be fair. And I've seen some heads shaking already from the task force. One thing Commissioner Blair has stated over and over again, I just want to echo that sentiment, is that although we're currently operating in the function of co-chairs, but this task force is all of us. And so those type of inputs and what we think is best for the commission as a whole is what needs to be given deference, where we use a lot in our commission, right? But it makes a lot of sense that we have to do. I just want to share that right there. So you had another comment too.
No, I appreciate that. And my only recommendation was just to look at the structure in the past when Ward 7 had an ANC A. So there was a different structure during that time period, but that's my recommendation. And I'm pretty sure that as more conversations continue with the redistricting process, we'll examine that further.
And Commissioners Blair and Castone, would it be helpful to show the map of new Ward 7 now that has the current breakout of ANCs and SMDs, so folks know what Commissioner Felder is referring to?
Yes, that would be a good thing to do at this point.
Terrence, let me give you sharing capabilities. For panelists. Okay. Terrence, can you share that map for me, please?
All right, let me see if I can pull it up.
Thank you, sir. And I think just displaying this, I think it'll be helpful for folks to see why there might be a need for an additional ANC given the new numbers in Ward 7. So Terrence, can you walk us through the additions that came into 7 in the area that Wendell is kind of referencing that might call for the need for a new commission?
Sure, and welcome everyone. Right now, it seems really small in print. I'm going to do my best to zoom. But this is a map that Office of Planning generated, which is showing the updated Ward 7 boundary with the, I'll just say the old SMDs overlaid. So if you see the orange outlines, that's showing the old SMDs, or I'm sorry, the old ANCs, the old commissions. So for instance, you can see 70 is indicated, and this is part of the border there in the orange. Further on within this map, you'll see along the blue, the SMDs that are indicated. So for example, this is part of 7D02. And then for the overall updated Ward 7 boundary, you'll see here this thick gray line where you see that that is showing you the updated Ward 7 boundary overall. So you can see in this area, hopefully you all can see me indicating this is RFK. This is Reservation 13 East. The orange line that I'm tracing now, this is pretty much the old Ward 7 boundary. And the current Ward 7 boundary follows along this thick gray line that I'm following and tracing now. So it comes along Benning Road, down 19th to Potomac Avenue up here, across the northern border of a Congressional Cemetery and then out. So in this area where I'm kind of moving this little hand cursor, these are the new areas that are added to Ward 7, in addition to the pre-existing, this portion of Kingman Park and RFK, and the land here. Zooming in just a little bit, you'll see about those ANCs and the SMDs specifically. So you see that 6A07 outlined here in this blue has been entirely moved over to being part of the new Ward 7. This little space here is a little small portion of 6A06 that's moved over. And then as we move further south in this region here, outlined by this blue line, and that's 6A08, which has been moved over in its entirety. As we continue south, this region here that I'm outlining is the 6B10, which has been moved over in its entirety. These two small blocks here, I believe are from 6B, I want to say 07.
No, that's not 07. It's
06. Well, these two are from a 6B SMD.
It's
and
the
right
6B08. It's the 6B08 and the 6B09.
So this portion here, if you follow this blue line here, follow along this gray line and then this new gray Ward 7 boundary, this is a portion of 6B09 that got moved over. So to recap, kind of moving from north to south, just for simplicity's sake, you have 7A07, a little piece of 7A06, 7A08.
You mean 6. You're saying in reverse. 6A, not 7, 6.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sheila. And it's right here, so you all can see it. I apologize. 6A07, a piece of 6A06, and all of 6A08, all of 6B10, about half of 6B09, and a piece of 6B. Sheila. 08, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That's
thank you, Terrence. And to the task force members, we just received these maps from the Office of Planning. So I will share those with you so you have them to look at and to play with and preview. So you will get these maps, and there are like 7 or 8 other maps that I'll be sending to you once this meeting is over.
Great.
Thank you, Sheila and Terrence. At this point, there may be some people attending tonight who were not familiar with the mapping resources available. Can either Terrence or Sheila just kind of let people know what is available, what they can look at, and how they can participate actively in drawing their own maps? In a nutshell, we're not looking for a deep dive on this. Just let them know where they need to go and what they can expect when they get there.
Sure. So I'll start out, but I'll let Terrence handle the nitty gritty of the system. So just as folks did when we were doing the ward boundaries, the Office of Planning website where you could create your own mapping, that same website is going to be used for the ANC SMD process, which Terrence is now displaying for you. And I'll put in the chat the link for folks. But everyone is encouraged, task force members, public, to go to this site. So it has been retooled for the ANC SMD process. And thank you, Commissioner Swanson, for letting us know we need to check with OP about the inability to create new SMDs. But you would go here, just as you did for the ward boundaries, to create your sample maps for input into this process. So I will put that website into the chat so folks will be able to do that. And like I said, task force members, I will send you the maps that the Office of Planning sent to us for your use in this process. And Office of Planning, Commissioner Blair and Commissioner Castone, they will provide training to 3 of your task force members on the mapping system so that you can use it in your process.
Thank you. Thank you for that important bit of information, especially for those who were not able to participate in the redistricting process we went through last year. Last year seems like so long ago, but a couple of weeks ago. Yes, volunteers. We will need volunteers, as I mentioned previously, and Sheila reminded me that yes, there will be some training, but we can only send 3 task force members to the training. So you don't have to put your hands up right now, but if you can put your hands up right now if you'd like, but if you want to submit an email letting us know that you're interested. The other thing we're going to need some help on is these meetings are always going to be recorded, but in order to keep us on task, I will really appreciate 2 people, not that you both have to do this task together every meeting, but because situations arise and one person can't make it, we need someone that can actually jot down bullet points, specific things that we need to accomplish before we come together again. So just the number one thing that I can think of is we're going to need to put together an agenda before our next meeting. That's one thing, because we don't want to have to go back and review an entire meeting just to figure out where we are and what's next. So that person, those 2 people who will volunteer to do that, that's a very important task. We're not looking for every point of every contribution to be recorded. We're looking for bullet points on where we are and what we have to do next going forward to get to our deadline of submitting our proposed map by April 1st, which has to be in report format. So we're probably going to look for some help with that also. About the mapping, those maps.
I'm sorry, you have a hand raised by one of your task force members, Brian.
Oh, okay. Question. Is that a question, Brian, or a volunteer hand?
Oh, no, you know me too well. Right now, just a question. Right now, just a question, but we'll talk about volunteering a little bit later. Just for the benefit of some of the task force members, if they need it, but particularly attendees who have joined us, can you just describe ever so briefly, or Councilmember Gray's staff, what we're seeking to do in the redistricting, in the sense of, is there a goal of a population per ANC SMD that we should be shooting for? Is there any sort of statutory or public policy goal of either size of the SMDs or other considerations that task force members should be considering?
Yes, thank you for that question, Commissioner Alcorn. And let me, as I've shared before, the task force is required by the close of business on Friday, April 1st, to submit its report to the council. And we will be providing you a template for that report. But in that report, the population of the ANC should be for the single member districts. The population should be within plus or minus 5% of 2,000. So that means that a single SMD must be between 1,900 and 2,100 residents. So when you are looking to change boundaries or rejoin SMDs, please keep that in mind, that it has to be at a minimum of 1,900 residents and a maximum of 2,100 residents. The other piece you have to keep in mind is that you can only use the 2020 census information in your deliberations for ANC and single member district boundaries. You can consider other factors, but you can only use the 2020 census data for that. In looking at voting, you want to make sure that you don't dilute the voting strength of any minority population within a neighborhood. And you also want to try your best not to split a census tract or census block. To the extent possible, you want to try to keep them together. And if you can't, you can't, but to the extent possible, you are guided by keeping them intact and whole as much as possible. And then additionally, once your report or your recommendations to the council in your report, not only do you have to map out the boundaries of the ANCs and the single member districts, but you also have to put it in word form, meaning you have to write out what the street boundaries of the single member districts and the ANCs are in your report. But again, we'll make sure you have the template for that report. Once you submit, your report to the council, your recommendation is a recommendation. Just like with the ward boundary process, in that the subcommittee on redistricting made a recommendation to the full council. Once it got to the council, it was on them. So you submit your report in April. In mid-April, the subcommittee on redistricting will hold another set of public commenting on your recommendation for ANC and single member district boundaries in Ward 7. And then they will hold a vote on whatever they say. If they accept the recommendations, if they make changes, they'll hold a vote. And then that recommendation from the subcommittee on redistricting then goes to the full council in June for final vote. I hope that answered your question. If you have others, just let me know, but I hope that was helpful. And Commissioner, yes, I see there's another question, Commissioner.
Leany, former commissioner. I did have a question about the, do we have any role in that public hearing process or any of the council's activities with our map once we submit it?
Once your process is done, do you have a role beyond that? No. So at that point, once you submit your report to the council, the task force is resolved. And then your public role, you can participate in that process. You can testify, do whatever, but in general, once you submit your report, the task force dissolves.
Thank you for those questions and answers. Thank you, Chief of Staff Bunn. Thank you for answering.
No problem. And folks are putting questions in the chat and I will get to them as soon as I can. But just multitasking here. I'm not forgetting about anybody. I'm not ignoring anybody, but just multitasking.
Yes. Chief of Staff Bunn is looking for questions and I'm looking for volunteers. I see my first volunteer, Commissioner Morris. Thank you for volunteering. We'll make note of that you are one of our volunteers this evening. Where are we now? Let's bring that.
Excuse me, Commissioner Blair.
Sure,
sure. The volunteers, are you volunteer for secretary or are you asking to be a part of the training?
So just to be clear, Commissioner Caston, Commissioner Morris is not a member of the task force. So the training is only for members of the task force. But I do see in the chat that task force member Eric Rogers said that he would help volunteer. So you can ask him what he's volunteering for. And Dr. Marla Dean said she would volunteer to participate in the training to use the mapping tool.
Okay, so I'm writing down Dr. Marla Dean.
Yes, and I will
Former-
save the chat as well. So if you don't get
Okay.
everything, I'm going to
Okay,
save the
so
chat as well.
we probably have our 3 potentially, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I see Justin Leaney has volunteered for the training. Dr. Marla Dean has volunteered for the training, as well as Melissa Freeze.
Okay. So we're making some good progress here this evening. Can we bring that agenda back up so I can see where
Yes,
we are?
ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Give me 1 second to clear my screen.
Sure.
Ms. Blair, quick questions, Francis Campbell.
Yes.
The 5 o'clock time, is that a hard and fast? Because I'm going to run into some difficulties on if it's going to be 5 o'clock on every Thursday. I'm just wondering if there's going to be, because I know a lot of you have other meetings, and I have a family issue that is sometimes going to conflict with that 5 o'clock time. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a hard and fast, or if there's going to be some adjustment at some point.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, Thursdays it doesn't necessarily have to be Thursday. I threw that out there so we could get some feedback. And what we're going to do is we'll probably either do a doodle poll, some way of polling all of the task force members to see where the majority of us can participate. You know, we all have a lot of meetings and we have family commitments. So we're going to try to consider everyone's schedule and see what we can work out. So we'll try to get that out within the next couple of days and give people time to respond.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The doodle poll.
Any
sorry,
other?
here's the agenda. So sorry.
Because we're getting close to 6:30, and I want to make sure we cover everything we said we were going to cover for this portion. Confirm leadership roles, understand resources. We talked about resources, community engagement, public listening session dates. That is something I think we should discuss at this point, and then we pretty much have covered everything, and we've been taking questions all along, but we can still take a few more questions after we decide on public listening dates, with keeping in mind that our goal as a task force is to have the 3 public listening sessions, and then after those 3 sessions, we would, as a task force, present a couple of draft maps and then get some feedback on those draft maps. So does anybody, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Commissioner Blair, you said you were gonna do the doodle, and I think you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because your meeting dates, I think, if I hear you correctly, are your public listening sessions as well. So we can do the doodle so that you all can figure out, so you don't have to try and figure it out now. So you all can figure out a date and time that works for you all. And I think that would cover any meetings that you all would have outside of the public listening sessions, as well as the public listening sessions. Because I know you all have commitments, so you don't have to hash it out now. You can do your doodle and figure it out that way.
Okay, we'll do that then. We'll cover the public meeting, the public listening sessions, and we'll cover the task force meeting. Look for an email inviting you to give us some input on both of those dates, the task force dates as well as the public listening session dates. Commissioner Joel Castone, I'm going to throw it back to you, see if you have something you want to contribute at this point, because we're getting close to our 1 hour goal.
And then also, Commissioner Blair, your task force member, Justin Leaney, has his hand raised.
Okay, let's take a question then from Mr. Leaney.
While we're on the subject of the community engagement, I was wondering if it might be a valuable discussion to get some volunteers to start thinking about that. Maybe, I don't know if we can form a committee or something like that. So that way we kind of can sort of parcel out some of the work that needs to be done.
Good idea. That's something that we can add into our, when we're soliciting input, we can come together on that. I think amongst our, looks like we're gonna have several more people to volunteer than what we would be able to send to training. So perhaps we can start with that group of individuals.
Fantastic. All I would add is that our action items is to surface the dual poll. That's our action item here. We cover a lot of other ground. So it was nice meeting everyone. It looked like we have a very robust group of individuals that's willing to attack this assignment right here. Together we should strive. So yeah, that's all I would add there.
Thank you, co-chair. I don't have anything else to contribute at this point. So if there are additional questions from task force members that we need to hear as together in this forum before we adjourn for the evening, specifically, I want to hear from task force members, but also we can take questions from the public if there's some public questions also.
Yes, good evening, Co-Chair Blair. This is D.L. Humphrey. It seems there has to be a
DL.
I'm sorry.
Let the task force go first.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
Because we have task force members first, so let them go first.
No problem.
So I see hands raised from task force members Brian Alcorn and Lee Wilson.
Hey there. For community engagement, obviously that's an upcoming piece, but in the interim, is there sort of one point of contact, a mailbox, or any sort of particular way that both community members as well as task force members should stay in email or other sort of contact on issues as they arise?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to offer not just my email, but I will give you my email, but my co-chair also, if everyone who has questions can make sure they send their questions to both of us, and then we can take care of it or address it at that point. It's going to be really important that as co-chairs, we get the same information so that we can confer and try to figure out where we need to go in terms of answering questions or acquiring other resources going forward. So before I close out, I'll give my email, and I'm sure Commissioner Castone will also.
Thank you.
Does that work for now? Because we don't have a dedicated email address set up for this function that we're doing here. But I will gladly offer up my my commission email address.
It's a short-lived activity, and it could go, either that way or, drive to one of the eponymous Gmail boxes that are set up for purposes, but we will leave that to the able co-chairs to determine.
Thank you for your question.
And so,
Wilson?
you have, yes, Lee Wilson has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chairman Blair, Chairman Caston, and Chief of Staff Bunn. I just want to go back real quickly. I hope, if I may, or if I can, go back to the subcommittee. Will the subcommittee be holding open meetings like they did for each ward? I know that Chairman Silverman, she had meetings for each of the wards. So will she be having meetings, public meetings to discuss various issues around, in particular, Ward 7, which I'm more concerned about, but I know she had meetings for each ward. And then has the makeup of that subcommittee changed any? Is it still the three, Henderson, Bonds, and Silverman on the subcommittee?
So if I can answer that question, Commissioner Blair. So
Sure.
the answer is yes. Once the final reports are submitted by all of the wards 1 through 8, the subcommittee will then hold public hearings. I don't believe she's going to do it on the ward level as she did previously because of the short timing of this. But she will hold public hearings on the maps that have been submitted by the ward task forces. So that answer is yes.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And we will share that information when those dates are selected. But yes, once you all finish your work, then the council, albeit first from the subcommittee, will have hearings and then the vote from the subcommittee and then the vote from the full council. And then Commissioner Blair, you have one more hand raised from your task force, Nisha Petruni, and as well as Wendell Felder, and just mindful of the time, it is 6:16.
Hi, I just wanted to go back to the question around like the community engagement, like smaller group of the task force, and clarify or maybe add that as an action item that I think in addition to us doing the doodle or making sure we can coordinate future meeting dates, we might also want to think about, are there other ways to split up this task force into potentially smaller groups so we can still accomplish all of the goals, and what might that look like? And that might be something we can talk about. So if folks, are able to think about that before the next time we meet, then maybe we can decide on what those smaller groups or sub task force committees, if we all decide that that's something we want to do. So more a comment than a question.
Comment.
And just to briefly elaborate off of, I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right, Nisha? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, that was my thinking as well. Currently, the structure of our ANC boundaries, we have ANC B, C, D, E, and F, which is 5 commissions, but the task force is comprised of nearly 20 people. So I was just thinking maybe we can kind of break the team down into 5s and cover the different ANC territories or ANC commission boundaries rather as a commission. And then I think that way we can kind of divide the workload, if that makes sense. So that's just a humble recommendation.
You have one more, Commissioner Blair. Justin Leaney, task force member.
Okay.
In Commissioner Felder's question sort of raised a thought in my mind. What are our expectations about proposing changes to borders and say like our own neighborhood? I mean, on one hand, we're kind of the experts on our own neck of the woods, but on the other hand, is that something we're comfortable with doing, since it does directly impact us on an individual level? That might be something just to think about for next time.
Thank you for that contribution there. Yeah, a lot of good ideas here this evening. If there are no more task force questions, we do want to leave a couple minutes for the public. We're at 6:20, so we can probably take maybe 3 questions if there's questions from the public. Well, I'm not sure what's in the chat.
So I do see we have 2 members from the public with their hands raised. So I am going to call, and the 2 hands that I see raised are from Gladys Mack and Rebecca Morris. So I will, Gladys Mack, you have the floor. Please ask your question.
The task force, 19 task force members, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said y'all want to break this task force up in two.
You went out, Ms. Mack. We can't hear you. Ms. Mack, are you there? Ms. Mack, are you there? Okay, we may have lost Ms. Mack. I'm gonna move on over to the next person. That will be Rebecca Morris. Rebecca Morris, you have the floor.
Looks like Rebecca Morris is muted right now. You might have to unmute her.
I'm asking her to unmute. She needs to click. She has to unmute herself. Rebecca, if you're there, I am clicking the ask to unmute button. Okay, Nate. Okay, she might be unmuted now. Rebecca? I see that she's unmuted. Rebecca, can you hear us? Okay. We can't hear you if you are speaking, Rebecca, so please type your question in the chat and I will read your question for you because I don't hear you. And the only other hand that is raised, and this would be Latanya Kyler. And you have the floor, Ms. Kyler.
Hi, Ms. Bunn. Actually, it's Henry Jones. It's Latanya Kyler's husband. I'm on her phone.
Hello, Mr. Jones. Sorry
Hi.
about that.
No problem at all. So I know this is just a preliminary meeting for this, but I thought maybe you would reference the benefits or not of the redistricting. I didn't hear anything in that regard for the various wards, and we're a resident of Ward 7.
I'm not clear on your question. Can you restate it for me, please?
Just the purpose, the plan, why the redistricting is taking place.
Gotcha.
Period.
Got you. So very quickly, every 10 years, the United States does a census count. And as a result of that count, in cities and states across the country, the redistricting process happens to make sure, and I'll just use DC as an example, to make sure that every ward in the city has a fair representation of population in each ward. So last year, we went through the process of redrawing the ward boundaries from 1 to 8 to making sure that every ward had equal population. There were some wards whose boundaries did not change. Others, there were some changes. Ward 7 was one of those wards because we were our ward had one of the lowest numbers in terms of population. So in that redistricting process, parts of Ward 6 were redistricted into Ward 7. So now there's a new Ward 7 so that our population, I don't remember the exact previous amount, but it was roughly around 77,000 to now, as of January 1st, with parts from Ward 6 redistricted into Ward 7, we are now at 85,685 residents. So that is the overall process of the ward redistricting. So once you redistrict, do redistricting on a ward level, you then have to look within that ward to make sure that the advisory neighborhood commissions, that they have an equal amount, as much as possible, an equal amount of population within those ANCs. So that is the part of the process, the final part of the process that we are taking up at this point. I hope that that answers your question. If not, just hit me. Okay, great, thank you. If you have any other questions, I'll put my information in the chat and we can talk about it later, but glad I could help.
Yes, you did. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I don't see any other, let me just try. So Rebecca Moore says she didn't have a question, but Commissioner Douglas had a question. I'm trying.
Yes, I did. I appreciate you calling. I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead,
I
Commissioner
just want
Douglas.
to say Happy New Year to everybody. I'm glad that you got on, and I'm happy that this is happening. But I would like to see, and no disrespect to Gray and anybody else, but it would be helpful if we can get this information at an early stage where we can share this with the community, what's going on, because I had to reach out to a Silverman office to get the information, which was not provided to the commissioners or commissioners. So I just wanted to say that they sent me the information about almost 5 o'clock. So I'm just saying, if we have these issues and we want the community, because it's supposed to be an open public meeting, which is so true. So we have to go by that law too, the Open Public Act. And we have to have all the information provided to our community, no matter what the circumstances are. So what is the input and engagement of the community? So how would you all reach out to them to make sure they have some information they want to be a part of? Because this is why we are elected officials and doing this because of the census and the community involvement for the residents. So I think we need to be a little bit more transparency and letting them know what's happening. It's the last minute that we get the information. And I'm just saying, I just wanted to finish my statement. Okay, I know you got me.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. And what I will say is that from the moment that we finalized our task force, this information was publicized on our social media platforms. We sent it out on the listservs. We did an alert to the almost 6,000 members of our newsletter database. Andrew Lightman from East of the River published it in his news outlets, and we plan to be and have been as transparent as possible. We are working under a deadline, and given Councilmember Gray's health challenges, it took us a little longer to get to finalizing our task force membership, but as soon as that was done, we hit the ground running in terms of pushing that information out. From the outset, the majority of our newsletters have been focused on the redistricting process and sharing as much information as possible. And that is also why we wanted to be intentional about the membership of this task force, to make sure that the community members that are represented here also help to get the word out about the process. And one of the priorities of the task force, I am sure, as Justin Leaney just mentioned, is making sure that the word does get out to the community. And we are partnering with the task force to do that. My communications team, they are on this meeting. And we've already discussed making sure that the dates for future meetings, any information that this task force publishes gets pushed out to the community. So absolutely agree with you. We are going to be and have been transparent, and we're going to make sure that as many people as possible know about the process and are involved in the process. Because even if you are not a member of this task force, public input is important to the council member and to the task force. And you will have that opportunity, as Commissioners Blair and Castone said. They're going to have public listening sessions with the task force to make sure that anybody who wants to be involved has an opportunity to give input.
Well, it would have been great if they announced it at our first year meeting in January. And Tamika been very happy.
Commissioner Douglas, I don't want to. I got, we're on the top. We're on the top.
I know. I'm just saying.
1 minute.
Be more
Thank
alert
you,
to that.
Commissioner. Thank you,
I know you cut me off
Douglas.
being disrespectful, but I just wanted to say that much.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Yes, you are, because you're not letting me finish. I said we need to have that at our first yearly meeting, which would have been helpful. Tamika's doing a wonderful job, and I just said that should have been announced.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
all.
And what I would say, Commissioner Douglas, is that we didn't have this information at the beginning of January. So that is why you're getting it now. We just finalized the membership of the task force. We just scheduled this meeting within this last few days. So we didn't have the information to give at the beginning of January, but duly noted, we will do our best to make sure everyone is informed. Thank you for being here tonight. Commissioner Blair, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you to again, to Councilmember Gray and his staff for helping us through this meeting this evening. And the question came up earlier from Commissioner Felder, wants to know if I had discussed the formation of a new commission with my co-chair. Literally 30 minutes before this meeting was the first time that Commissioner Castone and I had any words. So as to support what Chief of Staff Bunn is saying, this all just came about. I didn't even know I was on the task force until this week. So there was no information to put out prior to the last couple of days. So with that, we are at 6:32 and a couple of people I know have dropped off. They've had other commitments. I myself have another commitment, but I don't want to close out without making sure people know how to contact me. My email address is 7d01@anc.dc.gov. And if that's too fast, just you can look me up on the ANC website, along with any other commissioners. But that's how you can get in contact with me. I don't know if Commissioner Castone is still on. If he is, he can provide his contact
I've already
information.
done so. Thank you, Commissioner. I've already done so, Co-Chair. Thank you for this evening event. Stay out of the jump myself, but we adapt and adjust. That's what we all been doing. So that's what we're doing. You know, we adapt and adjust, and everything we're doing it's a testament to the service that we all providing. So as you stated, we just got on here, but we doing this together. So just want to acknowledge that point. Nice meeting everyone, and until we reconvene next time.
Thank you. So we're going to close out for the evening. Task force members, do look for that poll to come to your email box to figure out when we're going to meet, but we definitely have 5 sessions planned at this point, 3 listening sessions. So it would be about every other week. And we will give everybody an opportunity to chime in on dates for listening sessions, public listening sessions, as well as the ones where we will be specifically addressing task force business. If nothing else, we're going to close the meeting for the evening. Thank you for everyone who's still here. Looking forward to working with everyone, the task force, going forward and making Ward 7, forming a new Ward 7. This is exciting. I'm excited, and I hope everyone is excited. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, task force. Have a great evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.